This is the How to Succeed podcast, the show that helps you get to the top and stay there. This week, we're talking about how to succeed at climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. And our guest this week is Claudia Denser, EVP of Leonard's Photography. And we're going to talk about her experience in climbing Mount Kilimanjaro and the leadership and teamwork lessons she got from doing that. Sandler is the worldwide leader in sales management and customer service training. We have over 200 locations and an enterprise team if you have more than one location. Find more information at sandler.com. This is How to Succeed at Climbing Mount Kilimanjaro with Claudia Denser. All right, Claudia, tell us about this experience in the first place. Why would you want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro?
Well, I have received that question a lot. And it's a bit of a funny story because my son had a book that we would read all the time, and it was kind of like one of those visual books. So, and she found a radio, and on the radio, oddly enough, that was like in the streaming words was a quote from Africa by Toto, and I thought that was such an obscure thing, the song to have in this book. So. Anyway, long story short, I ended up having the song on my playlist because obviously, as any kid would be, he was very interested to know what this song sounded like to, better understand because of a theme throughout the book. So wow. I had it on my my playlist, and I had become a runner and had run a couple of marathons, and actually just was approaching an ultra marathon down in the Everglades. When much like I always do, I started thinking, what can I do next? I hadn't even really successfully done that yet. But my next thought was, what can I do next? And at a stoplight, while Africa was playing, because of course I'm playing from my iPod, the quote, "Sure as Kilimanjaro rises like Olympus above the Serengeti," comes on. And all of a sudden I thought, people climb Mount Kilimanjaro. So I immediately went home when I got home and I Googled it, and they do. And it is one of the most accessible mountains for any non-technical mountain climber, born and raised in Florida. I absolutely am.
A lot of mountains in Florida. No.
Yeah, not a lot of altitude here. So, and so therein became my journey to explore how I could do this thing and, what it would take, because I felt like I had completed a marathon. I did end up completing the ultra marathon in the Everglades. And I just thought, well, off to my next adventure.
Awesome. And yeah, bonus points for Toto for getting the syllables for Kilimanjaro and Serengeti in one line in a
yes,
song.
Exactly.
A lot of talent, but a funny inspiration. For sure. Now let's start with the attitude. I think you've already hinted a little bit about the attitude of, just kind of your next challenge, next goal of always pushing yourself and being a lifelong learner, lifelong, pursuit of excellence there, which is amazing. But when you go to do something like this, like a summit, is there an ideal attitude, or are there common misconceptions about doing this, or did you have any conceptions going in about what it would take?
I watched a lot of YouTubers because it's pretty much all I can do. Strangely enough, sitting here in St. Augustine, Florida, the owner of the company that organized everything actually lives here, and he's attorney by day, and this is his passion business. So he is the co-owner of a company over in Tanzania that runs this. So oddly enough, I had a great resource here. I had not known him personally before reaching out to him, but obviously we've become very good friends after. And so I felt like it was easy to start to figure out what it would be like. And I obviously think the trepidation, and I think it would be a trepidation with anyone and everyone I've spoken to. Obviously, the first thing is always, which you can discount, is you're from Florida and you're going to climb the tallest freestanding mountain in the world. And it's like, well, okay, first and foremost, it's not technical. There's one technical area in it. And even that day, besides just the scramble, it's not truly that technical. So it's a glorified trail walk, if you must. And yeah, I'll get to later. It wasn't quite as easy as that made that sound, but I think the biggest thing, though, for really anybody, and I heard a lot of stories when I was on the mountain, was the sheer altitude, and how your body is going to adjust and react to that altitude. And that's that unknown that I've been to Colorado, I've been to 14,000 many, many times, but 19,317, like, no, I have not. And I don't know where I would even mimic that except for Mount Kilimanjaro. So that to me was probably the biggest, and is typically the biggest, like, what's my body going to do and how am I going to make it up?
And I'm wondering about the attitude here. It seems pretty obvious of just the perseverance of this. If you're already an ultra marathoner, you can't do this climb, or you can't do an ultra marathon without feeling pain, without getting exhausted, without getting winded and stuff. So
Correct.
what's your attitude going into these big pursuits about what do you do with that pain and discomfort, and how why you choose that in the first?
So it's funny because this is a family business. So, and it does come with a lot of stress and, pressure to, perform and keep growing and, things of that nature. And I think before I really got into running, which was very much later in life, like I've barely been running for 8 years. Like it's that new. It's not new at all, or it's very new, but it's not an old thing for me. But I think for the most part in that, it became really fun for me, probably in kind of a sick way, of going through, when you go through all those emotions. Because like even with running a marathon, like in 1 hour, you could be, or even 5 minutes, you could feel like, man, I feel fantastic. Like this is amazing. And then literally like the next 6 minutes, your body's like, your leg's hurting. You need to stop. You need to take a breath. You can't go on. And so it's like you literally have to sit there and just kind of essentially self-medicate yourself back into the mindset to go, okay, stop. You're spinning out. Let's get back on track. Maybe walk for a second, or, hey, your leg doesn't hurt. Like, let's focus on something else and just get off that, So I think I loved that challenge. Again, not normal, I'm sure, but I liked that challenge. And I liked that, when you got through it and you could recall a lot of those instances through that race that you had those challenges, you were like, I got through that. And so then I felt like it helped me in really everyday stress scenarios of like, just saying, all right, let's take a moment. You can get through this. Like, we're fine. Like next 5 minutes, this is either going to matter or not matter, but we're going to get through this. We're going to breathe. We're going to figure out another approach. And so I think just kind of, putting those two things together, the physicality and then, the mental stuff of the job, and then how really similar those two things can be when you're in stressful situations, is interesting. And I think the difference.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of lessons, right? For business and in sales of just that perseverance you go through. And when you stretch your comfort zones like that, all of a sudden the day-to-day stresses seem a lot smaller comparatively. So I've done a lot of physical stuff, but even I had a few kidney stones. And like when you're in that much misery, the next time you're running and your calf is cramping up, you're like, okay, well,
whatever.
Compared to thinking you're going to die, this is pretty small. I can keep going with this cramp for a minute, That's amazing. What do you think are some myths or misconceptions? I think it's interesting when you do it that I'm sure you get a lot of questions that people are like, oh, they think it is completely different than what it actually is, or people that don't make it. Why would you think that people would give up or even fail to try to do this?
I would say altitude. Altitude's probably number one. I have heard so much, read so much, and then experienced so much of the people that are there that work the mountain like it's their office and lead you up there, that I'm sure there's companies out there that don't have super strong personnel that can help you get up that and kind of reach past some of those mental things that you can go through on a multi-day span of an event like that, like climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. But I think for the most part, it's altitude. And the CEO, who's basically he's the leader of the entire expedition, which in our case was Gideon. They're also very much trained to identify any altitude sickness issues at all. So your vitals are taken in the morning and at night before you go to sleep. He's consistently asking you how you are. His assistant lead that's the person who's training to become a lead at some point, is constantly asking you how they are. They're looking at your eyes. They're looking at how you act. They're looking at how much water you take in. So it's the entire management of what he had to deal with on a daily basis of just making sure we're okay. So I think if you did not have the support that obviously we had exceptional support, and I'm sure there's a lot of companies that definitely do, because it can be life threatening if not taken care of correctly. I think altitude would probably be the number one thing.
That's interesting. There's some lessons there too. I've already heard about good management and leadership and coaching your team and paying attention to them. And like you said, washing their eyes and checking in with them a couple of times a day. Like, if you want to keep your sales team going, those are some pretty good lessons. 100%. Right there. That's awesome. Now let's talk about the behaviors required for this and success and the goals, plans, and actions. I'm guessing you don't just decide you're going to do this and then next weekend take off and try it. What is the whole kind of behavioral plan to be able to be successful at it?
Well, I mean, I think ideally, like I said, for me, a bit more challenging because obviously if I did have a friend who lived out in Colorado and she's like, how in the world are you going to climb to 19,000? Like at 14,000, you were in a car, traveling with me. So it's like what, and so I'm like, yes, but the only thing I really could do is cardio to prepare as much as possible and wear your shoes. It's really, to me, it was basic stuff that I had learned from doing marathons. Like you don't want to go out and start the race in a brand new pair of shoes when you're running really any distance, but definitely not marathon or ultra marathon distance. Like you want to be comfortable in every single thing you have on down to your underwear. Like you need to know how it performs in that moment because that's not the time you want to figure out, what's going on. So, I think for that most part, a lot of the preparation was around, that sort of stuff. But cardio is really all I could do because I didn't have the time in about an 8-month span. I mean, to really start figuring out how I'm going to get to altitude and to figure out how my body would react to altitude.
And what about the regular actions and stuff? Were there lessons about leadership, mentorship? How did you figure it out, or did you work with the team or anybody to hold you accountable for this, or is it all on you?
Building up to the mountain,
or on it, either way.
Oh, on the mountain, you become I guess as I've stated, I'll do a marathon. I did an ultra marathon and it was all by myself. Like my husband's not a runner. I don't know a bunch of runners. I don't run to run with other people. I don't run to run fast. So this was a bit unique because I had always kind of been in a lone sort of sport. If I was doing, if I was running a marathon, I was alone. You're pretty much thrust, especially since I didn't go, like my husband was not interested in climbing or, anything. So like, it was just me from our family. So weirdly enough, 4 other people from St. Augustine also signed up. Now I only knew one of these people. I only knew him sort of not personally well at all. But you are kind of forced into a situation where if you are successful as we were, you have a completely different bond and relationship with these people that you did not know really much, if anything, about before you even embarked on the mountains. So, I mean, there's a lot of, and if much like you hanging out with your family or even some friends that you're close to, I mean, there's a lot of emotions because you're also all doing something very strenuous. Yeah. So, and you got a lot of personalities to deal with. So there's more than just the physicality of going through it. You're also at the same time trying to manage your relationships because you're going to be with this person for the next 8 days, and you're not sleeping in the same tent with them, but you're going to be eating lunch and breakfast and dinner with them. And you're going to be hanging out with them when you get
Well,
back
there's a
from your
different
trip.
level of trust too,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
That
100%.
this is a survival thing. So
Mhm.
even if you don't like the person, you all still need to work together.
Correct.
You can't just split off or other things that I think is a different level of commitment and
Mhm.
trust to strangers than you normally would get in any uh, other type of situation, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it so unique. I mean, and that these people could have been from anywhere. They just happened to be from St. Augustine, but that also, like I said, didn't mean that I knew them, or knew about their experiences or knew anything about their past or people they knew. So it doesn't make it easier. It's the same thing. You meet a person, and then the next day you're spending literally 24 hours a day for the next 9 days with these people doing this incredible thing. And, it's powerful, but there definitely are very irritating times during the whole thing where because you're going through emotions as well, and some people are vocal and some people aren't vocal. And it's all the different personalities thrown in there. So it does make it very interesting and challenging at the same point. It can be. And it can end up to be one of the most beautiful things, which it is, because I have a bond with 4 other people that I don't even have with some people that I've known forever.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
I guess that takes us to techniques here, and we probably don't need to talk about climbing techniques.
Mhm.
Anybody really cares about the techniques of that? But I'm wondering if you had any strategies going in about how you communicate with these people and how you're gonna maintain those relationships. Did you figure it out on your own, or were you surprised by any techniques that the Sherpas and leaders of the expedition use to kind of keep everybody on the same page? Were there any lessons here and
Well, I
techniques?
definitely think the lesson is, and you hear this a lot in business too, is transparency. I mean, there's obviously some stuff
Mm,
you don't need to be transparent about due to your role or how, who you are in the whole expedition in this case, or business is in the business case. But it's being if something's not working and something's not working right, you need to say something, because in this case it could be life threatening. In some business cases it's probably not that extreme, but it's the
could be
same
threatening the
concept.
deal or the business itself, though. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And so, I mean, I think for me, that was eye opening. I'm not a person who likes to just be like, oh, here's what's going on in my life, and or this is how I feel, because in your head, you want to make it to the goal, but sometimes you can get in front of your own self. You can get in your own way in doing
Yeah.
that. Whereas you have to trust this person. And in this case, this person who was in charge, the lead was Gideon. I had to have complete trust in Gideon to know I have to tell him almost every single thing I'm feeling, because I don't know what altitude sickness is, and I don't know how I'm going to be affected by that. That's a trust level to a human that you have not met before that moment. That is
Yeah.
like next level. I mean, if you really think about it, it's nuts. You are entrusting your goal in this expedition to this person to keep you doing that and to keep you as safe as he possibly can do, because sometimes it's not. And it's not a mountain that not a lot of people die on that mountain. It's not like Everest, but I mean, it happens. And sometimes it's because you had no idea an underlying condition, or
Right.
somebody didn't see something, but God forbid it wasn't because you didn't say something. So that openness and that communication, not normally in my comfort zone at all. So I think in that way, that's a very unique technique of communication that I brought back with me, because I'm like, if something's not working, I need to communicate that to an employee, to a sales representative, to what not, and maybe they need to do the same, because I can't fix what I don't know. So it goes back to that concept, but again,
Yeah,
on a
that's so
more
good.
life or
I
death
think
sort of scenario.
I'm picking up lessons of paying attention, or like you said, of transparency and authenticity, and taking care of issues before they become bigger. And
Yeah.
sometimes in life and business, we go, it's wrong, but we'll take care of it tomorrow, or we'll see if it gets bigger. But when you're doing something like that, you need to pay attention to those a lot sooner and take care of them
Well,
before
and
they
I
bloom.
think the most important lesson in that was also that his communication back to us, that his goal is not to have us not succeed at what we were doing. So if I'm telling him, yes, my head hurts today. yes, I'm having a pain and it's not going away, or, whatever it is, I'm having shortness of breath when I lay down, whatever it was, his goal, and this is what we all needed to remember, is to get us up that mountain. He's not happy if we can't make it. So if we entrust him that information and he can give us the tools to get past whatever it is we're going through in that moment, his goal is not to get us to stop. And I think sometimes people can get in their own way by like, I'm having this really bad headache, but I'm not going to say anything because I want to make it. Well, that's his goal too. I don't want him to stop us. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's his also goal. And he was very good at communicating that. His goal is to see us succeed and come down safely and have an amazing experience. So he's going to do everything in his power to get us there, but he can only do that if we are honest and tell him what is happening.
I like that. And I think that's such a direct correlation to the business world, that your manager wants you to succeed. I think a lot of times employees think the managers are trying to catch them doing something wrong or fire them or something. Like, managers don't want to fire people ever. They hired you because they want you to succeed in that role, and they're rooting for you every day. And they want you to make, the right choices and do the right thing. So that's an amazing lesson. Anything else I should have asked, or any other lessons that we didn't get to yet?
Just the whole team. I mean, I think if you ever hear a common kind of denominator between any sort of person, and I think this goes for, I can only speak to Everest just because I've watched many videos of people doing that, but definitely Kilimanjaro it's the people. You get done and the whole team, from Gideon all the way down to, we had 5 people who were climbing and we had over 25 support people helping us that all played different roles. Very definite, knew exactly what their role was. Either it was in the kitchen, there was a head chef who would cook everything and go with the food tent everywhere we went. And then there was a person who did put your tents up. So every single person knew exactly what their role was, what role they played as support. And they were all in. There was never a moment you felt like they were like, oh, I wish I was at home. Never. Like it was just goal one. And they were always supporting you, cheering you on. Again, the common denominator you will hear from everyone. I heard from almost every single YouTube video I ever watched before I went to the summit, was the people are amazing. These people, the Tanzanians that make this their life and make this their office, and they are just, you'll never find people like them. They are unbelievable because that is their passion and that is their goal. So it's a beautiful thing when you have a team that is so connected and supportive of you and seeing you succeed no matter what. You don't find that a lot of places, but you can definitely find that on Kilimanjaro.
I love that. Again, we're talking with Claudia Denser, EVP of Leonard's Photography. You can find them at leonards.com. You want to give a quick plug if anybody happens to be listening that would
yes, we support schools all over the state of Florida and up into Georgia, and we make them part of our family. We're family owned and operated for over 75 years, and I'm happy to be part of that family. So we love working with our schools and seeing all those kids smile.
Love the school photos, for sure. They've gotten much better than when I was in school.
I know, they're a lot different than when we were kids, right?
For sure. I found some the other day of mine with the laser backgrounds from the 90s. So
that's awesome. Back, by the way. That's back.
Yeah, it's back because that was cool.
And it's a big seller.
For sure. Just don't do the
no shot. Giant hands and nope.
All right. I wanted to get to know you a little bit better before we let you go. How do you define success at this point in your career? You've had a lot of success on and out of the business world. But what's your definition of it?
I would say just a continuation of learning, like always being able and open to learning something. Like there's always something to learn. So I think just to me, it's always keeping that excitability of every single day I'm going to learn something and I'm going to grow in that. And I love that. I love that feeling because every experience gives you something new that you can take from or learn. And I would have never in a million years thought after climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, I'd be on a podcast relating it to leadership. But again, you learn, there's stuff in everything that you can tie back to and learn from. And it's just, I love that. I love it.
I love that too. That's one of my top things for me. What about the opposite question? Was there a biggest hurdle you had to get over in order to be successful, or a particularly hard lesson learned that allowed you to grow more than a success, maybe?
I think it goes back to almost the same thing. It's being closed-minded or thinking you know a new approach, you know that, or you've exhausted that. I it's the closed-mindedness in that, and there are, there's still a few things that I'll find myself doing, and I'll have to remind myself that that's not the way to succeed or progress, and you need to have that open mind in order to succeed.
And do you have a favorite quote, motto, or mantra?
I do, and it might seem a little strange, but I think it's very appropriate. So it is from Winston Churchill, because he's one of my favorite people to grab quotes from, because there's no one better at quotes than him, in my view. But if you're going through hell, keep going.
I love that.
And I think that's true in any of those, marathons and ultras, and, and Kilimanjaro is just like, there's such beauty through the other side. And often it's that piece, again, that you need to learn lessons from to get to the other side and realize how beautiful it is. So
that's one of my favorite quotes as well. And I think it's so great, because if you're going through hell, that's not the place to stop and set up camp.
No.
You gotta keep going.
Don't
Get to
set up
somewhere else
camp
first. I love that. Again, thanks for being on the podcast. Claudia Denser, Leonard's Photography is at leonards.com. If you want more information on Sandler and how to succeed at sales, leadership, customer service, and customer success, go to sandler.com. We have a ton of free resources, and our summit coming up in Orlando, Florida, March 19th and 20th next year. Find the tickets, sandler.com/summit. Until next time, whatever you are, be a good one. And don't forget, share this episode with someone who hear it.